Luton-born ex-EDL leader Tommy Robinson has been invited into schools to give talks on tolerance. Well, my team rang the school to find out why. They said no comment, and hours later they announced they'd cancelled the visit. Well, it was 2 years ago that Tommy Robinson told the public if any British citizens died at the hands of an extremist Muslim, the entire Islamic community would feel the force of the English Defence League. Last year, he apologised live on BBC Three Counties Radio.
I don't want to talk about the past. I accept that shouldn't have been aimed at all Muslims. A lot of the time, over the last 4 years, I've generalised. When I've been saying things, I get angry. I've got different things I'm thinking about. I know who I want to talk about, and sometimes that will come across that I'm talking against all Muslims. And it may have been offensive to all Muslims, and for that I apologise. But I want to move forward.
Regardless of his apology, he's a man who is associated with thugs and football hooligans, and a man who, in November, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit mortgage fraud. So would it be unreasonable to allow a man like Tommy to go into schools to offer advice to children? Should Tommy Robinson be allowed to give talks in schools? Tommy joins me live in the studio now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, did you ask to go into the schools to talk to the children, or did they ask you?
No, the schools asked me. So, basically, a teacher, or teachers, it's not going to have been a lightly made decision. They've come to a decision that would have benefited the pupils. They contacted Quilliam. It wasn't just me going in. I'd been sitting with Dr. Osama Hassan, who's a very religious imam at Quilliam, and discussing my experiences and the rights and wrongs.
So, what would you have said that would have been kind of constructive and helpful for the young people, those kind of minds that are like sponges, those impressionable young people? Because I'm sure there would have been some parents who, on finding out that the former leader of the EDL, the English Defence League, which, like it or not, some people associate with kind of a racist attitude, some parents would have been very concerned about that and would have thought that you would in some way try and indoctrinate their children.
Well, all I've had is support coming through from pupils and parents, saying that all the pupils want me there. I believe they're doing a petition to their teacher over this matter. What would I have said? I'd have drawn a fine line and a clear line between ordinary Muslims and what is annoying most children and most people, which is murky. It's murky waters. I'm guessing that is a predominantly white working class school, and say, for example, you've got 500 pupils and 10 of them are Muslim, with many of the issues that are going on around the country, which is, reality is that there's a lot of anger and frustration, and people are getting more and more angry, and they're going to get more and more angry, and more problems we see in this country, which will grant Islamist extremism. Now, I've been able to draw a fine line between ordinary Muslims, say the 10 Muslims are in that school that may be getting a hard time, and the people they should be angry with. And you can do that by sitting with Osama. I speak in my life experiences in Luton. I know it's not every Muslim. I've said that from day one. I don't think when I was leader of the English Defence League people listened or believed it. I don't think they believed that I do have good Muslim friends.
You've always been very kind of anti-Islam, though. I mean, I've spoken to you many times, and you've been very, very kind of aggressive. I've had to tell you off sometimes because of your aggression on the programme towards Islam.
When you say aggression, I say passion. I feel very passionate about what I talk about. And when I say Islam, I'm thinking of the Islamist ideology, Sharia law. I'm still very passionate against that, just as passionate as I was with this before. And I think most people in this country are angry with what they see happening across the country. And this, to me, is complete hypocrisy. I've sat in this radio station with a Islamic imam from Luton who said on the radio, in an ideal society, homosexuals should be executed. Now, he teaches and he talks in Luton schools. For me, that's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that he's allowed contact with children like that, and he's in promoting his version of Islam.
Just to clarify, what he said is that in an ideal Sharia society, that he never expects to see in this country, but he never expects to see that homosexuality would be punished.
He wants.
That's what
he's making an excuse for it. What he said.
I'm just clarifying to make it. He's not here.
Okay. Well, in his ideal society, he would be killing homosexuals. Now, he's talking in Luton schools. And for me, that's a problem. And the reason why I have such a focused vision of what I saw as Islam and what I see as Islam is what I see as representative of Islam in Luton. I see Salafism.
But his view, and if that is indeed something that he has said, and if that is your interpretation,
do you think he should talk in the schools?
If that's what he said, surely that's not representative of most Muslims.
No, of course.
Listening to this programme won't be thinking like that.
No, but he says it was. When he was in here, he said that's what every Muslim believes. That's his words. Now, he's a representative, he's a leader of a mosque, he's talking in our schools, he's working with our council. That's a massive problem for me. Do you think he should be talking in schools? Where are all these organisations that bombarded this school yesterday when they found out I was talking? Where are all of them on this issue? Why are they not contacting the Loughborough Council? Why are they not contacting the High School where he talks?
Just listen to this one example that we picked out from the papers yesterday. This is a voiced-up comment from a parent discussing the fact that you had initially been invited to go and talk in a school.
Given this man's appalling record for thuggery and his history of inciting racial tension, it beggars belief he's being ushered into classrooms. I'm disgusted. What on earth has he got to say that's worth our children hearing? He should just crawl under a rock and keep quiet.
Who sounds like the fascist, me or her?
Well, you believe that her views are fascist?
Crawl under a rock. She's implying I'm an animal and a creature. And when she says inciting hatred, I've never been charged with inciting hatred. If she wants to talk about my criminal record, I'm more than happy to talk about that. Yes, I have got a violent offence, and that was for knocking out a Nazi, because I'm very strongly opposed to Nazism. If you want to talk about my recent fraud, which you've started off speaking about, yes, I did plead guilty 3.5 years ago. Not just myself, but my wife, my whole family were arrested. And after 3.5 years, the police sat me down, which I see as emotional blackmail, and said that if I plead guilty to this, they will keep my wife out of the courtroom. Now, the only bit of security I have, as a father and a husband, is that my wife is not recognisable when she walks through the street of Luton. What would any man do sat in that position? I pleaded guilty. And what I pleaded guilty to, when this comes out in the press, I haven't committed any mortgage frauds. I lent my brother-in-law some money, and he lied on his mortgage form. So all these headlines, the other headline is that I'm a convicted hooligan. My conviction is for swearing at a football match. So all these things put together, and people wish to portray this image of me. It's not a true image. Yes, I've made mistakes. Yes, I've done things wrong in the past. But that lady there, I very much doubt she was a teacher of. She's a parent of any of the kids in the school that I was due to be speaking in the North East. She sounds middle class. She sounds quite poshly spoken.
But do you think that the way that you have tried to get your message across is in a very kind of, and I know you picked me up on the fact that I talked about aggressive earlier, but I stand by that. I mean, I've watched some of your YouTube videos, and okay, you may argue you're passionate, but you're quite aggressive in the manner that you talk about this subject, and you swear a lot in your YouTube videos. And if I was a parent with my child going to that class and they were going to be listening to you, I would be worried that you weren't perhaps the best person to be sending that message.
Welcome to working class Britain. People swear, and people do conduct themselves. When you're saying
they don't all talk like you.
No, when you're saying with the parent, I looked at some of those children's comments who was tweeting me last night, and they were tweeting me saying they felt disappointed, they felt that they had something taken away from them, etc., etc. And then I looked at their comments straight after that they were making on their timeline. Now, they weren't differentiating between good and bad Muslims. Yeah, they weren't. So, if anyone would have been able to sit there with Osama from Quilliam and differentiate between this is good, this is right, and also because which we need to do, which it seems to be indoctrinated across this country in our schools, they can be proud to be English. They can stand up against extremism. They can stand what they believe in, and there's a democratic way and values of doing it, which I don't think the way we did do it, or I did do it, was the correct way. But at the same time, it needed to happen. What choice do we have?
But you can't leave your past behind. And I guess that's part of the problem with all of this.
My past is a life experience, and in many of these issues, we have ex-gang members who have shot people, killed people, talking in schools. Yeah? That's what we have. We form gang members, and everyone bends over backwards to say how great it is. Now, the only difference between me and most of them is that I'm white and I'm working class. And that's the issue that seems to be a problem here.
And let me just ask you this question, because there will still be some people who will be thinking, what is all this change in Tommy Robinson about? 1 minute he's, the leader of the EDL, it's all about trying to stamp out any kind of Muslim progression in this country.
No, it wasn't. It hasn't been. It certainly wasn't about Muslim progression. It was about, when I was leading it, if you listen to what I said, if anyone would put up any of my speeches, I give a speech 4 days after the Uber was killed in Newcastle to 7,000 to 10,000 people. And in that speech I said, when I was leader of the EDL, which people say, what is all this change about? Listen, dig up that speech and listen to it. I make a point of saying there's over 700 Muslims serving in our British Army. there are also, it's honourable to oppose Sharia law, it's honourable to oppose terrorism, it's cowardice, and you are a moron if you're going to go and attack a mosque, and if you're going to abuse a Muslim woman walking down the street. So I was saying that when I was leader of the EDL. So no one wants to hear that, because that doesn't sell papers.
So why did you leave? What was the reason?
I left because I think there's a more constructive way of highlighting these issues.
And who told you that you should leave?
I told myself 9 months before.
So you woke up one morning and you thought, this organisation that I've helped to create, which must have felt like a family to you.
Yeah, of course it did, yeah.
You suddenly woke up one morning and thought, actually, I don't want to be the leader of this huge organisation now that is growing in numbers.
It was growing in numbers. It was at its peak, and for me, it was.
Were you worried you've created a bit of a monster?
No, for me, it was the most difficult decision I've had to make in my life. I felt like I was mourning a family member from about a month after it. But at the same time, it's about achieving. How do we achieve what we want? So we were making a lot of noise about these issues which we're angry about. How do we actually achieve what we want? We're not going to achieve what we want without working on Muslims. I don't believe the EDL brand, the way it's gone, some things that have previously happened, will be able to facilitate that.
So do you accept that the EDL at the time that you left had become an organisation that certainly was perceived as being a kind of right-wing, very extreme, racist organisation? Do you accept that that's how it was perceived?
Of course that's how it's perceived, because every politician that ever got a chance on TV would say that's what it is. Any time a newspaper would write anything, they'd say that's what it is.
Yeah.
So whilst we was trying to keep people that we didn't like out of the organisation, the newspapers and politicians kept inviting them back.
But a lot of supporters of the EDL, they are racist, aren't they?
No, a lot of supporters of the EDL are ordinary, normal people.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. But there's also a lot that are racist. I mean, for example, when you and I have had discussions, when you've been in the studio, we've had discussions about the EDL. When you were the leader, I would frequently get tweets from people who would be sticking up for you and saying, go Tommy. And I'd have a little click through their timeline, and the kinds of disgusting comments they were making, not about Muslim extremists, but about all Muslims, were very common. And actually, when you start to look at that and you think, these are the people that are engaging with you, then was that what started to prey on your mind? But did you start to think, I have created an organisation that, even though its intention was not to encourage loads of racist people to find a home, that's what ultimately it did?
Yeah, for 4 years I did have it was a struggle. The whole 4 years was a struggle, leading it, to keep out the far right and the far right. I don't believe the English Council was a far right organisation. I'm saying it wasn't.
But do you think the timing, I mean, for example, when Lee Rigby was murdered, it was just disgusting. The whole nation was appalled at what happened. The EDL decided to go and have that protest at that time, and for many people they just felt that it was capitalising on something and trying to create a sense of kind of disgust at Lee Rigby's murder and to kind of make it into an anti-Muslim.
I think you're wrong there, because if we would have wanted to do that, we would have marched through a Muslim borough, which is a predominantly Muslim populated borough. We didn't. We chose Downing Street, and it was more of a pressure relief valve to let people have their say and have their frustration back, which is what you do in a democracy when you're angry, which is what we've done. We chose Downing Street and we had one in Newcastle. So if we want to be provocative, we could have been Bradford and Luton or East London.
Well, you could have been even more provocative, yes.
So it wasn't provocative. When someone's just been... What we organised, if you look, we've done one in Luton, you probably saw about it. We've done 60 different towns and cities, Walk for Lees, which was completely peaceful, other than in 2 cities where some far-left agitators and Muslim youth turned up and attacked it, to lay flowers. People at that time, as you say, the whole country mourned his death, and everyone felt so hurt and disgusted by it, they felt like they wanted to do something. That's many people. And I weighed up and thought it was a good thing to let people have their say and do something, which was laying flowers over Warmore. It's not very provocative, is it, in reality?
Considering your past, and am I right in saying that you are a former member of the BNP as well?
Yeah, in 2004, again, I joined the BNP, and when you drown in your clutch of straws, and this town's been drowning for a very long time, I opened a national newspaper and saw a piece which was Al-Mujahideen, and their head office was on Biscuit Road. You know, Abu Hamza, Omar Bakri, and the most militant Muslims in the world, some of them, yeah? Well, their head office was on Biscuit Road in Luton, and they were openly in the paper saying that they had sent people to fight for the Taliban. Now, when I got online and looked for help in dealing with this issue, there was only one group that was talking about it, and it was the British National Party.
But this is reasonable people.
But if you let me finish, I was 21 years old, so the BNP, I joined the BNP. Now, I was on the league list in 2004. They set a meeting up in Luton, up at the old King Harry. And when we went to the meeting, with my black friend, he wasn't allowed in when we got there. At that point, we found out then that black non-white people couldn't join the BNP. We refused to let them have their meeting after that, and if you look at the leaked list for 2005, 2006, 2007, I was never a member again. So again, the BNP got 2 million votes in this country. That's not because there's 2 million racists, that's because there's 2 million desperate people who feel like they're drowning, and they were the only party that were talking at the time. And when I looked into them and found out that Nick Griffin was the ex-leader of the National Front, and actually it is a racist a racist party, it's not for me. But at that time, as a 21-year-old man in this town, when I looked for people speaking up against this Islamic extremism that was plaguing this town, no one was doing it.
But based on your rationale behind looking for the BNP and for coming across it, I mean, most reasonable people would not sign up to an organisation that have at times claimed they'd like to repatriate people of various colours to different countries.
Well, but what I mean is, until you join...
Does that show your judgment has always been a bit out?
As a 21-year-old lad, yeah, okay, judgment's out. I didn't know what they're about. When I read their 10 points, I thought, well, you'd be a moron not to agree with those 10 points. And it was only then when I got into that organisation, I found out myself by being within it, what a racist organisation it was. And it's not for me as a Lutonian. And that's not for me, and it never has been for me since that day. And
considering your past, do you have racist thoughts that you managed to suppress because you know that moving forwards, in order to be seen as a credible person, you must suppress those thoughts?
Does someone with a conviction for knocking out a Nazi sound like he has racist thoughts? In your opinion?
So the answer is no.
Of course it's no. Come on, man. I actually feel insulted by that question after you've studied, you've looked at me, you've listened to me many times, so have many people. The whole of Luton knows I'm not a racist. The whole of Luton. You can come and meet my group of friends.
Some Muslims I have spoken to consider you to be a racist.
Well, because I pick fault at parts of their ideology. Like if I pick faults of Scientology, people wouldn't call me a racist, would they? That's my point. My point is it's an unjust argument, and
we can go back as well. But we can go back. We can find the examples of things you've said. That I know you've apologised. No, you've apologised. Okay. For example, the fact that you said that all of the Muslims would face the full force of the EDL.
As a young man who started English counselling at the age of 25, I've had cameras, undercover cameras, everything with me for 4.5 years. Not once have I said one racist thing. I think that says it itself, isn't it? Nick Griffin and anyone else who is a racist, you can just go on and find so many things I've said that are racist. Never once in my life have I said a racist thing. Yes, and again, in 4.5 years of speeches across the country after the murder of Lee Rigby, all these different issues that have inflamed the whole country. Well, I've got one speech where I say to all Muslims you'll feel the full force of the English Defence League, and that's it. In reality,
are you a well-educated man?
I left school with 11 A to C's. I got an A in maths. I got 5 B's, 5 C's. I then studied as an aeronautical engineer where I qualified. I then left that and restudied as a plumber, which I qualified. I run my own successful business. I run my own shop and live next door. I believe, I am quite educated. Yeah.
The decisions that you've taken and the way that you've kind of conveyed your feelings, do you believe that they are consistent with a well-educated man?
I believe I've had a complete apprenticeship in... My whole life has been an apprenticeship in multiculturalism, in Islamic extremism, because of where I live, because of the experiences I've seen, what I've heard, what I've lived. That's why I say I don't talk about things I'm reading in books. This is a life experience. And I've just had 4 years experience of battling the far right within an organisation. So do I think I'm more qualified than talk to someone that's lived in, had a posh education and gone to university and read a load of books about? Because it's like when I hear these experts on multiculturalism or these experts on the far right, I say, where do you live? And it's usually some village in St Albans or something. And it's like, well, I'm not being funny, mate, but you actually don't. And I have it all the time. Like you said, people say I'm a racist. I had it the other day where someone called me a Nazi when I walked past them. So I followed after him and said, please ring a black or an Asian man off your phone now. Do it now, ring your friends. And he couldn't. I said, so you want to call me a Nazi? Affiliated with killing 6 million Jews. Well, I can my whole phone book of friends who are loyal to me and who are my best friends are not white. Yet you want to call me a racist. All these people that wish to judge me as a racist are sitting in their little lovely leafy suburbs that don't know what multiculturalism or what Islam in any way is about. And that's why when I say I'm qualified to talk about it, for me, even when I was leading the English Defence League, if school children would ask me to come to a demonstration, I told them no. When I saw kids at demonstrations, I said, you shouldn't be here. This is not for you. And at the same time, so if I was talking to children, what message would I be giving them? I'd be giving them they should be proud of who they are, proud of their identity and proud of their country's history. And they don't need to search for a culture and search for identity, which many of our youth are, because they are part of the best culture and best identity that this world has. being born an Englishman.
Do you think that you are more clear thinking now than you were 2 years ago on this issue?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I went to jail, if I'm honest, before I went to prison, I was a mess in the sense of I was drinking a lot, because I guess it was my way of dealing with pressures and stresses, leaving the English Defence League, having those in the mornings, getting violently attacked, my family weren't happy, and it was when I went to prison and had 18 weeks away that I evaluated everything, and I did come out a different man.
But if you accept that you are now a more clear-thinking individual, and perhaps you suggest now that you are the right kind of person to be standing up in front of a whole load of school children and talking to them and educating them, do you think that you perhaps carved out a public persona, a national profile figure that you became as the head of the English Defence League? Do you think you carved it out before you were really ready?
Well, to be honest, I didn't plan it. It just happened. And if I can show you this now, you can read this, This is from a boy who's at South Luton, at Barnfield South. When this broke the news yesterday, I've had loads of school kids from Luton messaging me. If you want to read what he's saying about what's happening to him at school at the hands of Muslim gangs, there's so many children like this. You can read it yourself if you wish. You can read my replies to him. He's giving that, don't read it out though, or give his name, but just so you can see. And he's talking, and he's giving me names of some of the gang attacks, and there's police articles, and but at the same time, who do these?
Can I read out that top message there that he said?
Yeah. But just I'm not. So if you read further down, he begs me not to.
No. He says, any chance of you talking at my school? I won't name the school. Your views need to be put across, as my year is mostly Muslim.
Yeah.
That would seem to suggest that he's saying, I wish you could talk because I don't like the fact that there's loads of Muslims in my ear.
Go down. If you go down and read, he says there's a developing
Muslim gang within my school that go out mugging and battering people of any age, and it's worrying as it is. But what was he hoping that you would say in a school that would please him? That seems to just back up the argument that many people would feel that you would go in there and be in some way anti-Muslim.
To be honest, what that school would need is Muslims going in there and talking against extremism and for tolerance. What that school would need. That's what it needs. There's a big problem in that school there. Yeah? And what I'm saying is, who are these kids, which are English kids, who are feeling like a minority, who are feeling isolated, alienated, who are not feeling part of the fabric even of society? They can't walk with their heads held high. And there's an issue, and that needs to be addressed. And I know for a fact from parents up at that school that that's not being addressed. And for me, I feel passionately about that. I feel very passionately about that. And I'm having loads of kids like that sending me these messages. And I get kids every day contacting me from across the country.
But are they kids who ultimately, deep down, have a kind of resentment towards Muslims, and they look to you as being the figure that they can kind of identify with for some support?
They're children who are desperate, in my eyes, But when you say support, I don't think there's anyone there that can isolate and talk about a life experience that, look, you can be angry against certain things, but you can't be angry against your average Muslim who's going to work and living his life. You know what I mean? And sometimes, when I was reading the comments of some of those children from that school yesterday, that's what it's boiling over into.
Tommy, I could talk to you all day. Sadly, time has beaten us, but thank you very much indeed for coming in. You've been texting me your views. JBS, why should he not talk in school? There are Muslims that teach in schools. That's an anonymous text. Jason.